Welcome to the Evolved Caveman podcast. I am Dr. John, the guide for your heroic journey towards greater health, success, and most importantly, happiness. And now, on with the show. Hi, this is Dr. John, and I am thrilled to announce that Jory and I are opening up our retreat in beautiful Costa Rica from September 28th of 2024 to October 5th. Everyone wants fulfilling relationships. The hard part is love is not enough. So many factors can get in the way, preventing ongoing connection, intimacy, and aligned growth. All healthy relationships start within. But when we have unresolved stuff, it can easily interfere with those we are seeking to be closest with. Whether you're in a long-term committed partnership or are single and are looking for love, this retreat will guide you in the heroic journey of healing yourself so that you can be open and available to cultivate the fulfilling relationships you desire and deserve. To find out more, visit joryrose.com/retreats. That's JOREEROSE.com/retreats. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. John back with the latest episode of the Evolved Caveman podcast. And I am honored to have with me today as my guest, Lois Koffi. Well, she was formerly known as Lois. Now her ceremonial spiritual name is Misty Magdalena Grace. She is a plant medicine woman, spiritual teacher, and microdosing coach focused on mental, physical, and spiritual health. She's been a coach for 23 years, coaching 20,000 plus people in health and fitness, as well as business and sales. And she's seen so many people focus on the external doing of goal setting, New Year's resolutions, intention setting, and realized that most of our success actually lies within. She's had her own awakening journey of working through addictive behaviors, depression, anxiety, and struggles, as well as many victories and successes. She's lost 12 friends to suicide and many to addiction, and has a huge vision to help people safely use sacred plants for healing. She is trained with several plant medicine women and shamans through initiations and deep dive healing over 50 times. She lives in Southern California. Whew, that was tough. And hosts retreats with her beloved husband, Emmanuel, who's a shaman. They specialize in ancestral trauma, addiction, and connecting with your spirit guides and higher self. Magdalena, welcome. How are you?
Yay, I'm amazing. That was amazing because that was a mouthful. I appreciate you introducing me. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So I'm excited to get into this. So how did you get into this? How did you get to this point in your story where you're leading ceremonies around healing journeys and psychedelics?
Yeah, well, gosh, it's twofold. Number one, I first had that background. I knew for a long, long time I wanted to be an individual who brought health, hope, and healing to people. That's why I got into the health and fitness industry. And, over 17 years of my 23-year career, it was touching lives with body, mind work. But I always felt like there was something missing. And I didn't realize that until I was missing it. And kind of went into what I call like a dark night of the soul, downward spiral in my marriage amidst all of the loss that I had, and including I lost both my brother and my mom in the beginning of 2020. My dad.
Wow, I'm sorry, that's rough.
I know. So I was just adding grief upon grief upon grief. And underneath all that was a lot of unresolved trauma. And I didn't know. I was on autopilot, hamster wheel, chasing the big sales, the money, and trying to provide for a family, and trying to keep it all together as a mom, a wife, and a businesswoman. Essentially, didn't realize that I had shut down a lot of my feminine side when a lot of this trauma came up as well. So I was really masculine dominant, and I became a binge drinking workaholic. And so essentially, amidst the pandemic, it actually helped, exacerbate the pain. Because again, I had more friends commit suicide during that time, lost my brother and my mom, like I already said. And by the fall of 2020, I felt like a zombie. Drinking way too much alcohol to escape, and feeling like I was going to either be on the road to death and divorce. Because, oh, by the way, my husband was also mirroring back a lot of my wounds and a lot of his own numbing mechanisms.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could go on for hours on that. But to keep it short, I read a book called The Surrender Experiment. And it was by this guy, Michael Singer. And it pissed me off at first. But there's a saying, Dr. John, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. And in the book, the guy was talking about how he was a hippie. He was meditating all the time. And he literally he didn't set any goals. He just went inward every day, and he became a multi-millionaire and a CEO of an amazing company. Again, he didn't plan any of it. And here I'd been, kicking ass, taking names, setting goals, teaching people how to do that, right? And making tons of money. Oh, by the way, getting paid as a sales coach at that time and in that iteration of my journey in 2020. But when I read that book, I was like, oh yeah, he's actually right. And I then met a spiritual mentor who said, hey, you're not supposed to be doing what you're doing. You're going to be a healer. You're going to be a teacher. And oh, by the way, go play with some ayahuasca and some psilocybin. And this was all channeling. He was channeling this from the divine, not a plant medicine guy, by the way. And at first I was like, who the hell are you? And what horse did you ride in on to tell me this without my permission? But again, just like that book said, surrender, go within. And then he said, go within with what now I now call sacred plants. I was like so broken that I was like, okay, I want to live. I want to figure out how to choose life instead of all of this external validation that was leading me on a road to nowhere. And so I sat with my first plant medicine journey in April of 2021. And the rest, as they say, is history. I realized quickly, and a shaman actually told me, and my husband, he's like, you guys are going to be doing this work. Again, all of these channeled messages, all these signs, all these teachers. And then, of course, as I peeled back the layers of all of that grief, had all of my friends who committed suicide visit me and tell me in my journey space, you are here. We need you to be our voice. We need you to go out and heal and teach people the things that we couldn't heal and learn. And essentially they were saying, thank you, Magdalena, for healing what we couldn't heal, because a lot of it was the mother wound, the father wound, the religion wound. I now have a new one. I call it the witch wound. And, all of this ancestral trauma that we all carry in our DNA, 7 generations plus, I believe, back on both sides, mom and dad. And if you don't really fully get to the root cause of it, you're just medicating your medications, or you're living status quo. Or in the case of many of my friends, they commit suicide. They die. Yeah. They say, I'm done with this life. And so I saved my life, saved my marriage, still on the journey. I still have more to learn and to grow from, I have no doubt. But to be able to share what I've learned with people and help them go within, that's why I'm here. And that was the spiritual component that I was missing in my health and fitness career. So now, I've got mind, body, and spirit all together. And lastly, I also have seen a lot of scary stuff in the plant medicine space. I've seen a lot of misuse of these sacred plants. And so me and my husband, came out of the closet actually sooner than we anticipated, because we really want to hold safe containers and support people in a sacred way. And I can finish there for now, because I'm sure we've got a bit to unpack.
Yeah, there's lots to unpack there. Thank you for sharing. And there's all sorts of ways my mind goes. I think one of the best ways to do these kind of journeys is to have a husband, wife, or male, female sitters, and to have two, right? Because I've heard enough stories about shady stuff going on, whether it's with shamans or whoever, with sitters, when you're at your most vulnerable, sitting on a journey. And I think we need to put up some safeguards against that.
Yeah, I agree. And oh boy, yeah, I could tell you some stories of things that I've witnessed for sure. But I think the other thing to add to that, if I may, is that, that feminine and masculine energy in the container also has another element, another layer that I personally have witnessed and loved. And now our clients are saying the same.
Yeah. And I've also seen plant-based healers who I would say aren't qualified to be doing what they're doing on a cognitive or emotional level. Like, they may be spiritually qualified, but there's other levels in which I have some serious doubts. So I think we're kind of dipping our toe in this water, and we're kind of feeling our way through. And I think for anyone that's considering going on a journey, make sure that you get someone that's well grounded, is balanced cognitively, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me too, like I agree with you because I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly, and I've experienced it. There's so many elements to a safe container and a sacred space, protection, but even just the integration after. Like, I come from my fitness and nutrition background, mental health background, all of the things. So to be able to also nourish and prepare your body and mind before you go in, and then after, is like also just as important, if not more so. There's a lot of that missing in the space and in the industry, because a lot of people will go and get the big, wide, blown open thing, and then afterwards just go back to working with cannabis on the daily, or drinking, or eating pizza, or not really taking care of their whole body, mind, and nourishing themselves properly, because it's a lot that comes up in the medicine space.
Absolutely. And I mean, I like that idea of it's the mind revealing itself to itself, or the soul revealing itself. And that can be an exhausting and depleting journey. So tell me, walk me through kind of the process that you go through to set people up for success during the journey, during the journey, and then post journey.
Yes. And so I'll speak from both my perspective and my husband, my partner, since he's not here today, because he is the shaman. He is an actual real shaman. I know people, they throw that word around. And I remember when I first came in the space, I didn't even know what that meant. And so I'll maybe speak to that, since that I just started talking about it. But as a shaman, they go into the spirit world. They also protect the container from, dark energies, and help cleanse and purify the space. They can even call in the ancestors and help if you want to do that during the ceremony. And he even starts before the ceremony, preparing the spirit world, if you will. And if our attendees can share a little bit about their ancestral heritage, or if they're already working with any kind of ascended masters, guides, teachers, or not, we don't care. We work with all people, but he can actually tune in with that and kind of like psychically and energetically and shamanically tune in. And he's already in the ceremony himself, as am I. When people sign up, ideally we want them to sign up 2 weeks before an event, because it's really all about preparing the temple, your body, mind, spirit temple, from a nutrition standpoint, because different people will do what they need to do for them, especially if they're in the addiction space. But we want them to cut back on the alcohol, the sugar, and there's certain foods. And I'm not going to go into all of that, but the physical component, but even just the mental component, like if they want to do a social media cleanse, or just cut back on certain toxic people or conversations, even lighten their schedule a little bit more, focus on their sleep hygiene if they can, up to 2 weeks before. But usually if they sign up, the latest we want them to sign up is the Monday prior to, like, say, for example, a Saturday ceremony. And again, we have a coaching document, intention setting, we have a group call, and the coaching document gives them access to some meditation, some journal prompts, some how to, really sit with their intention, and again, prepare the mind, the body, and their spiritual exercises. Are they doing any meditation prior? Encouraging them to get out in nature more, and really just tune in to what it is that they want to release, and what is it they want to call in, and have any specific breakthroughs. So we coach them on setting intentions, because as you know, where your intention goes is where your energy flows. And we've seen massive breakthroughs just by doing that proper preparation and intention setting. And then, of course, the ceremony is a huge day.
Well, can I pause you there for a second? So
please.
I think one of the other things that has struck me recently that's helpful, although not always possible, is to bring in community. So family and friends. I think if your family and friends are supportive of you doing a journey, it's helpful to bring them in and let them know, hey, I'm going to be doing ayahuasca on Saturday, or I'm going to be doing a psilocybin retreat. And just so you know, I might be tapped out, the next day or two. And And what about preparing your clients for challenging experiences or, quote, bad trips, unquote?
Yeah. Well, the good news is if they do all those other things, we haven't really had anyone have a
Okay.
trip at this point. Now, keep in mind, I find personally, this has just been my experience. The medicine is going to be gentle with you the first few times. A quote unquote bad trip, again, everyone's going to have their own journey. Didn't happen for me until several journeys in, because by that point, my mind, my body, and my spirit was ready to handle it, to be able to receive it. So, but to your point, that's why we also talk about breath work and meditation and decluttering the mind and the schedule as much as they can. And the nutrition component coming in, they're going to have a much, much better experience.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. And breath work, and we teach them the day of, just so you know, we teach them, I actually do a chakra clearing at the beginning of the ceremony. We also serve hape, which is a beautiful shamanic tool that also cleanses and releases and gets rid of some bad, they call it panema, which is just a fancy word for saying bad energetics.
Yeah.
And then we do a lot of things to prepare them. Like we don't actually serve the medicine until about 2 hours in, because we're cleansing, we're clearing, we're saging, we're preparing, we're speaking intentions to the medicine, all of that kind of stuff. And then we tell them, we do a little breath work just before as a final reminder, how to breathe through a scary situation, how to be, how to ask for help, because there is value in the struggle. There is value in not us trying to rush in and try to stop, because we want to teach them the emotional intelligence. Because most of us, it's childhood trauma and or ancestral trauma. And a lot of us numb out because we don't want to feel the feels. So we want them to experience the anxiety, the fear, possibly the terror, and we hold space for them, and we have our own tools to help them move it through. And if they can't get, like after a while, they can't get it through, then we have the tools to help them process and move it through. And we learned that because guess what? We didn't get help. I actually was, traumatized and quote unquote, kind of like injured in different ceremonial experiences. So we know when to help and when to just hold space.
So let me ask you this, because it's, in my experience, it seems that a challenging experience is primarily fear-based. I guess it could be anger, but it's some degree of fear, terror, panic. And, you're seeing something or encountering something that you're fearful of. And that's what most people quantify or characterize as a bad trip.
Yeah.
And so if you can prep the client for that possibility and remind them, hey, look, there's a lot of psychological gold in those challenging points of the journey. So try not to panic, remember to breathe deeply, and remind yourself this is going to pass.
Yes. 100%.
Does that fit with your experiences?
100%. Yeah. There's value in, like I said, the discomfort. Most of us, in America specifically, because I am American, this is where I live at this point, we've been taught to avoid and push away and to, again, numb those uncomfortable experiences. But we want to teach people how to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, because guess what? I can almost guarantee you, if it shows up in the ceremony, it's going to happen on your way home or when you get home and get back to the concrete jungle of life that we all live in. And that's why we provide 30 days of integration support, breathwork classes, meditation classes, inner child healing, how to hold yourself classes in order to be able to process it more safely.
Yeah. And there's new research that shows that each of these substances, depending on the substance, it will open up or reopen a critical window of learning in the brain for 2, 3, or 4 weeks. Yeah. Usually it seems to be tied to how long, the length of the trip, the length of the journey. So the longer the journey, the longer the window it seems to open. So it's usually 2, 3, or 4 weeks, but it's reopening these windows where you can have this rapid, quick learning. You can have epiphanies well after the journey has passed.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's some people, and I know I'm a bit of an extreme case, because I knew right away that this was going to be my path. So I did sit, deep dives, no joke, once to twice a month to really, really heal. And most practitioners do that, by the way. In fact, if you go to the jungle, you're down there for 3 months, unpacking and maybe sitting with medicine 3 times a week or 4 times a week. So that's the teacher's shamanic path. Okay. So just put that on the shelf for now. I'm not advocating for that because I also didn't work a whole lot during that time. Oh, by the way. So you've got to be able to go back to normal life. So I only advocate people, depending on how deep their trauma is and how quickly they want to process and move through and what their budget is. But if you do just 1/4, that is a beautiful path of deep healing, but you do got to be committed if you're going to do that. Otherwise, one journey a year or one journey a lifetime, sometimes that's all a person needs or wants. And that's beautiful. You got to decide that for you.
Yeah. So, okay. So now we're past the initiation part of this, and now we're into the journey. And I imagine the journey is going to vary based on what medicines you're offering.
Yes and no. Because I've sat with so many medicines. I, of course, have chosen what I'm serving because I'm not a jack of all trades, and I have a deep relationship with the medicines I'm serving.
And so go over those medicines briefly, if you would.
Yeah. So we, because I'm also a microdosing coach, so I'll share that and a little bit of a hidden element in there as to why I'm sharing that. But we work with hape. That's a tobacco that helps with cleansing and clearing. We also work with sananga. Sananga is an eye drop that they both actually open the third eye and help ground you, really, really grounding you to then be able to receive what I call the main course medicines. For us, it's Silawaska. So we work with, and it's actually Bacarius capi. It's a vine. It's the legal portion of Aya, and with the Aya, that is just a microdose. We just want it's a heart opener. So we do a tincture under the tongue, a certain dosage depending upon the person, but pretty much the same. And they hold and meditate with that, and it just gets into the body. It opens up the heart so beautifully. And then we work with a heroic dose of the psilocybin. Different strains called to us at different times. We also set a theme for the ceremony. The theme actually, I've found, makes a huge impact on the container, on the collective.
Can you give me an example of some of the themes?
Yeah. So because of our path, and we really focus on the divine feminine, the divine masculine. So like the mother wound, the father wound. But there's also those energies inside of us, our brains, our hemispheres. And so we've done the masculine wound, and we've had people have, like, we're calling it lifetime breakthroughs with their father wound, heavily addicted to alcohol, antidepressants. And in just 2 ceremonies, specifically the one with the father wound, they broke through that, and now they're a completely different person. So the themes do make a huge impact. We have one coming up that's the sacred feminine, or the mother wound. It's kind of a however you want to play with that, being able to then focus on bringing forth more of that feminine energy, intuition, receptivity, love, compassion, things of that nature, and then healing that from your childhood trauma, all of that kind of stuff. So those are examples. And then so with the heroic dose, we consult with each individual on what's their sensitivity, how they sat before. And so, that's all I'm going to share with you about the medicine.
Okay.
But
how do you account for things like antidepressants?
Yeah, we have a full intake and a full screening on that. And we have the right to, refuse supporting someone if they're even extremely addicted to other substances, or if they're on a lot of medications. We won't work with people.
What about contraindications? Psychosis, bipolar?
Yeah, we actually don't work with anyone that in that extreme. We will refer them out because that's beyond our scale and our abilities.
I've also understood narcissists and borderlines doesn't work very well for them either.
Yeah, that would be where, and full props to, like, I know there's psychedelic assisted therapists out there and psychologists. I'm a big believer in collaboration and niches and specialties. I cannot work with everyone, nor should I, and nor should anyone else. So I'm all about referring out if it's someone that I don't feel like it's in my capacity to support.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. And so you sit in the journey, or sit for the journey. And then what about integration afterwards?
Yes. So as we come out, we get people back into their bodies. We'll do some maybe light yoga, dancing. We have different types of exercises and things that we share with people to ground. Because some people, it hits them harder than others. I know for me, when I first started, like it would take me a really long time to come back and be able to be quote unquote sober, if you will. So we always serve food, nourishing, healthy, clean nutrition and water. And then we allow them to eat. And then we go around in a circle and we share what each person's experience. We give like a timed amount to allow people to speak and to share from their heart. And they also have the option to not share, because some people it might have been too much and they're just not ready, and that's okay. But then we do a group integration call within the week. We'll for first timers, we'll also do a one-on-one call. That's included. And then we have a 30-day online class container with breathwork, nutrition, inner child healing, yoga, and meditation classes. And they have on-demand recordings, because we don't know when someone's going to have an experience or a memory or a flashback or something that comes up. We want them to have 24/7 access to that portal, so they can go in at any time and move through with, a chakra clearing exercise, or move through with the breath work, or move through with a meditation. And there's very specific ones for plant medicine and microdosing clients. They also get to use my portal as well. And then if they need more support, we could refer them out to someone if there's a specialty, like if someone's having a really big trauma. I am not qualified for that. I'm going to refer them out to one of my specialists. And then if it's something more simple, like ancestral healing or just a conversation, or I have a lot of processes I can take people through, then it's just additional cost for investment for integration calls, because that's what I did. Unfortunately, I didn't find anyone who actually offered up integration support. I had to ask and for it, and then hire someone. It wasn't just automatically given, which I find is missing in 90% of the cases. But it was all good. It brought me to where I am today, into like having automatic integration support, because a lot of people don't know how to ask for it when they're coming out of these types of experiences.
Oh yeah, to me it has to be assumed, like it's just part of the package.
Yeah.
And the research backs that up, that some sort of integration sessions afterwards is critical in terms of sealing the gains that you made during the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. It reinforces it, allows them to be seen, heard. And like I said, I have so many processes that I take people through depending upon where they're at and what they need. Again, based on my own trial and error and experiences.
Yeah. So as I've gotten more into this, I guess, psychedelic psychotherapy role, I've realized, so my background has always been highly scientific. So I got the brain science down, I got the psychology down. I've had to learn more about the spiritual side in this whole thing. And so talk to me a little bit about that, the role of spirituality in these journeys, because it's huge.
Yeah. And I can say that's also a very interesting, sensitive subject. And you and I had a great, beautiful phone chat about this. Me and my husband, we do come from more of a spiritual standpoint. So that's why we also would refer out any bipolar or any kind of like extreme medication cases, because personally, they're probably not going to receive the medicine very well. And they need a one-on-one container, not a group.
Agreed.
Ceremony. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just throwing that out there. But we want to help people go within, because there's a saying, the kingdom of heaven lies within. Well, that's the God, the spirit, the source, the divine, whatever you call it, that is inside of you, that is just waiting to come out and play. And most of us have grown up in dogmatic religions or institutions that says, no, you can't have spiritual gifts, and no, you got to just follow all of these rules, and you got to believe a certain way, and a lot of rigid structures, which is a lot of what I got to heal, honestly. And I've been able to go into the spirit world and reconnect with Jesus and Mother Mary and heal a lot of that wound.
Well, I think to me, that's one of the, sorry to interrupt, I think that's one of the huge gifts that these plant medicines do for us, is they break up rigid thinking. Because rigid thinking to me is a hallmark of most mental health issues out there.
Yes, yes. And I believe that's why most of my friends committed suicide. Honestly, they were on antidepressants. They weren't allowed to really play with their true spirituality, their truth, their essence, their own divine beingness. They were stuck in the structure of doingness and not allowing to go into other realms or other dimensions. We allow you to do that. We hold space for that because that's what saved our lives
Yeah.
is more of the spiritual connection with the divine, again, source, creator, whatever. And even for me, going all the way back to my ancestors, I've had so many medicine sits now where I'm connecting and communing with my dead loved ones, those who have gone before, and my ancestors way, way, way back to the beginning of time. My husband can see that, he can support that, and then to be able to really be a witness to that and hold space for people and have them have a safe space to do that, because that can be terrifying. I believe some people have even committed suicide because of their spiritual gifts. They thought they were demonic, or they didn't understand them. And so we want to help people do this safely. And then also to know that they're not crazy, because how many people have probably gone to the psych ward because they thought they were crazy, right? Or are on medications because they thought they were crazy. We want to bring that human and divine connection together and help them develop those gifts, not necessarily in the ceremony. That's more for like after. That's a whole nother conversation, but it's the best way. But the plants are sacred. They're consciousness. They've been around here millions, if not billions of years. So they understand that divine entheogen, because I don't like the word psychedelic. I use medicine, but one of my shamans, he would always say entheogen, the God within. That's what the shamans, indigenous cultures, they did. They didn't believe that any disease was physical. It was all spiritual, and you had to go within to find the root cause and to pull it out by the roots, which is usually, again, ancestral and or karmic. And to make peace with that and understand that in the spirit realm is so much better, in my opinion,
than
most psychotherapies.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I just had a pretty revolutionary experience. I don't know if you know the term unattached burdens, but it's in internal family systems. In psychology, it's a way to refer to energy, usually dark energy, that comes into you from outside of yourself.
Okay.
And, most cultures on the planet have some form of this, some belief in this, and many would call it spiritual possession, but IFS doesn't want to call it that generally because that's not scientific enough for them.
Okay.
But, if we assume that the brain is porous rather than what we've always done, which is assume the brain is non-porous, and the only things that we know of that are not porous in this world are dead. So why would we assume the brain is not porous? But then the brain can take in these outside energies through a variety of circumstances. And I had a client recently that I suspected had one of these, who was this unattached burden was telling him to kill himself daily.
Right.
And so I actually brought him to a spiritual healer, and she removed this unattached burden, however you want to define that. And that whole thing used to be outside of my outside of my worldview.
Yeah.
And now it's squarely in it, because I've talked to so many people that have had their own experiences with them, either personally or, tangentially in a journey. So this idea of ancestral trauma and karma, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and I want to just reinforce what you said, because that's the other reason why I'm very picky about who I sit with. And like right now, at this point, I only really want to sit with my husband, my partner, because he can do what you're just talking about. I have sat in my own home in ceremony with him, and I felt like I was possessed and having an exorcism, and he could see it. And it was actually ancestral. So it's a good segue. These were like ancient beings that had contracts with my soul up till now. And he had to say, it's time. We were sitting by the fire, because fire magic is part of his thing and his gifts. And so he was able to release them. And so to be able to have that ability to help people, because you can go sit with anyone, I suppose. You can sit with your friends in a van down by the river.
Yes, you can.
And do these medicines. But I'm here to tell you, the veil is thin. And if you're not protected, and if you have any of these types of things that are a part of you, watch out. This could be, some people have done ceremonies and gone and killed themselves. So you don't know what you don't know. You've got to have the right safe container. And that's part of what I discovered. A shaman told me to go back to ancestral trauma. He actually said my ancestors were blocking me. This was way back in the beginning when I started in this space. And I was like, wait, what? My ancestors are blocking me. And these were the not so happy ancestors.
Oh, well, and it's interesting because I've also talked to indigenous healers who will invoke, like they will call in well ancestors. And so like, can you give me just the psychologically healthy ancestors to come in and protect us and talk to us during this journey, please? We don't need any of the nut jobs in my lineage. Okay. Thank you.
Well, actually, you kind of do, because we want to call them out. Yeah. And I wish I would have had someone who specialized in this earlier, because I went through about 6 months of hell, probably trying to figure it out on my own. And then I went to an ayahuasca ceremony and had a different spiritual teacher had told me, yeah, you got to cleanse and clear. You got to cut the cord of the not wise and healed. We called it wise and healed. And then I did that with a spiritual ritual that I can now help my clients with. And then I went and sat with ayahuasca, and I sat with my ancestors and got some real clear answers as to why were these other ancestors, essentially blocking me and hurting me. Again, in my logical mind, I thought it was hurting. And he said, well, you signed up for that. You came in, that was your karma, to have this 14-year period of essential hell, of carrying the karmic ancestral shame, guilt, and fear of many generations. You chose in this body, in this lifetime, to come in and cleanse and clear that. And now you've got the lesson, because I had to humble myself. I had to get to my knees and to, coin a spiritual term and just be like, please, I'm ready. Can I be done with this lesson now? And so I communed with grandmother ayahuasca and some mapacho tobacco, which is how you call in the ancestors, which we also do in our ceremony. The wise and healed, to say, hey, can I be done with this? Now they showed me why I had this stuff and why I chose it karmically. And now I asked permission, can I be done with this? And they laughed and they said yes. And I just ran to the bucket, puked my guts out, literally. And then thankfully, because I had the right teachers and tools, I was able to process and release, and it completely shifted my life. And so that's why we want to talk about it here today, and also with our clients, if they're open. And you don't have to be ready for this. It was probably in, months into my journey, but if someone is open and ready to, literally, you're healing many generations, and then you're creating a new lineage for your family. Even if you don't have children, you're also healing the collective. So that's the kind of stuff we want to help people.
So Magdalena, I got to interrupt here. And I got to say, I am so jealous that you have some wise and healed ancestors. I'm not sure I have any.
Oh, you do. You do.
I'm just teasing.
Okay. Well, you said wild. I was going to say, I don't know.
Wild.
They're pretty wild.
That was a combination of wise and healed, wild. So let's talk a little bit about the masculine wound and the wounded feminine as well.
Sure.
So let's start with the masculine wound. So I'm assuming this is a wound that happens from your father at a young age, but you probably will take it back lifetimes as well.
Oh God. Yeah. Because if you think about it, especially with our generation, I guess I'll speak for myself, like the Great Depression era, that's where my father.
You were alive in the Great Depression?
My father was born.
Okay. I was going to say, you look great.
I will say the plant medicine has, regressed me down a few years. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. But anyway, the Great Depression era, and he carried a lot of that right inside of him, which, for better, for worse, made him very emotionally unavailable. A lot of scarcity, not enoughness, a lot of rules, control, protection, fake it till you make it mentality is the whole society, by the way.
I was going to say.
Masculine wound is not just father, it's patriarchal system.
That's man box, yeah.
Yeah. So to be able to recognize that through the medicine and to help people find that love and compassion first for your father, whether you had one or not, whether he was emotionally available or not, that's a huge step towards healing your own masculine wound, because you embody that which came from your father and his father and his father's father and because like my family especially came from Germany over the ocean in like 1860 something.
Yeah.
They carried a lot of shame and guilt and in some ways, might have been running away as the black sheep of the family, a lot of judgment. And usually the men were in charge, right? So that's a lot to carry. Our men carry so much. And then I'm a woman, but I have masculine energy, left side of the brain, feminine energy, right side of the brain. So it's not about just the father stuff or the grandfather stuff. It's also that logic, analytics. That's the execution side of our brain. And if it's wounded, that would happen for me anyway, is then you're just chasing after the money, you're chasing after the numbers and the sales and the analytics. And, that's not a healthy, balanced way to be. I had really suppressed my feminine as a result.
If I can jump in there, I mean, one of the things that I see with a lot of men in particular, and I guess corporate women, is that over-identification with the thinker.
And the career. Yeah. The
like
label.
We just think we're the thoughts in our heads, and we've completely disconnected from our body and emotion.
Yeah.
And it's very problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's goal driven. It's the think and grow rich, self-help movement.
Yeah. You get the self-referential values and goals and purpose. I'm going to get wealthy. I'm going to be famous.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to be a social media influencer, which don't actually bring happiness, fulfillment, and satisfaction.
Oh, because that's where I was. I was making tons of money. I had a top 20 podcast, blah, blah, blah. I had an email list of 5,000, blah, 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 blah. I could go on, right? But I was making it all about the ego. And that's like the masculine wound is definitely more ego driven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you can recognize that, you can't heal what you can't feel. You got to acknowledge it. You can't heal what you can't name. This is just my personal experience.
Well, you can't heal what you're not aware of, which is most of us.
Yeah. 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 And we're in a time, if I can go a little esoteric more.
Please.
So we're in a time of the age of Aquarius. We're in a time of the feminine energies coming in hot. That's why we're going through the world that we're going through right now, why there's more wars, there's even more suicide, there's more everything. People are freaking out because this feminine energy is so different than the masculine patriarchal stuff we've been, with for the last 3,000 to 4,000 years. So it's forcing us to look at this stuff. In the past week, I have seen so many more clients and associates and friends have way more trauma come up. And a lot of it is father wound stuff, mother wound stuff. And guess what? That's just going to keep rising because this age of Aquarius stuff is going to happen till the end of 2024. And really 2025, 2026, I think we're going to have a very, hopefully, this is my prayer, with the plant medicine, I've been shown and what I see just across the board in non-plant medicine healing space is that by that time we'll have a lot more love, peace, and kindness, but we got to do a lot more shadow work and uncover these mom and dad wounds or masculine and feminine wounds, whichever name suits you.
Yeah.
In order to really, like Carl Jung talked about that, the unconscious, shadow work psychologist that's not always popular because people want to focus on Freud or
I hate Freud. I love Jung.
Yeah. So we got to do
Freud
more.
Liked to have cocaine blown up his ass. But that's not why I hate him.
I didn't know that.
I just don't agree with a lot of his ideas. I mean, he was brilliant. He did start psychology, but a lot of his stuff was not on point, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always like to throw in the backstories of some of these psychologists.
And that's the thing is, again, going back to your question and why we do want to balance the sacred, the spiritual, and the mental. But I find, again, just like the shamans did and have taught us, that a lot of it is spiritual and rooted in those deep traumas and karmic lessons that if we don't know, we can't change and shift them. Just like I didn't know I had a masculine wound until I went through this space. And then when I started to heal that, then I recognized the feminine wound, which is where you're shutting down and you don't trust your intuition. You're prone to burnout. You don't because you don't ask for help. You're asking for help is a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if you have a feminine wound, and you can have one just as much as I can, even though you're a guy, we tend to attract a lot of narcissists, to your point, or we will attract more masculine wound dominant
Hmm.
especially males, but also women. I
Yeah.
did that too. Oh, by the way, and it can show up in business partners, clients, friends, So if you don't heal it, which is healing it in your heart's your largest brain. And that's what's magnetizing these experiences to you. If you don't heal it, you're going to keep attracting all of
Yeah.
this shitty, shady experience stuff. That's why if you don't focus on the heart brain more in this space, as a lot of people overemphasize the head brain in everything, but also plant medicine, you're not really getting anywhere. It's still analytical, psychological stuff. You got to get into the heart.
Well, and that's one of the things that has caused me to start to get more into this plant-based healing for clients is I've realized there's a limit to what talk therapy can accomplish. And my whole career, I've been looking for tools to support mental health and wellness. And, to me, psilocybin and MDMA are two of the most powerful tools that we have. I don't have experience with ayahuasca. That may come down the road, but it's really powerful medicine. And with my own experience of psilocybin, one of the things I've gotten really into is this idea of animism, of that there is sentience and spirit in all living things. And, and then the next step was, so I could totally get behind plants, trees, animals, all that stuff. I was stuck at, what about like my computer, my AirPods, metal, how far do we go with this? And then just today, there was research that came out that said metal heals itself. And there's an experiment that they did. They pulled platinum apart 200 times a second to make these micro tears in it. And on a nanoparticle level, the metal started healing itself and would heal some of these micro cracks.
Wow.
I don't even know how to make sense of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know where to begin.
But it opens up a new way of looking at the world, I would argue. One where you're more in touch with it, in tune with it, where you have more awe, wonder, curiosity, joy. That to me is the goal.
100%. It's more,
after you heal your shit.
Yeah, because I couldn't feel joy or bliss, or anything, honestly, authentically, because I was so blocked. And, in my chakras, in my heart, had a brick wall around my heart. And I find a lot of people do. So if you're in that space, like you said, psychotherapy and grief counseling only made it worse for me.
Yeah. Well, and I like that idea of a brick wall around your heart. I think that's so true for so many of us, where I'm of the belief that the vast majority of us feel things deeply. And then life becomes too painful for us. We get hurt, we get betrayed, and then we start to wall up and we build a brick wall around our heart. And then we just cut ourselves off, which just creates this damning cycle of misery.
Yeah, because I found I didn't trust myself. I blamed all of my quote unquote bad business partnerships, failures, and of course the guilt around friends committing suicide, or, then when I started having addiction issues, then blaming myself for being a worthless, all of the things, because we can be so harsh on ourselves and so critical because we're not allowed to ask for help or show weakness. And so that's where I had to really, really rewrite and reprogram my DNA. I recoded myself so many different times during ceremony with these plants but again, you have to integrate that and apply it in your life. The ceremony by itself won't just do that, but it's really important for people to trust themselves more than ever now.
Yeah. And just one last question. I'm aware of time. So in the research that is going on right now, they're looking at, and I think this is just the easiest path to get to legalization, but they're looking at using plant-based medicine, mainly psilocybin, some ayahuasca. I guess there's LSD also, which isn't plant-based, but to treat things like major depressive disorder, anxiety, OCD, alcoholism. And what is your thought about using these plant-based medicines to heal places where we're broken versus strengthen mental health?
Well, I'm going to answer that question with another question. I guess who's serving the medicine? That's my question to you, because I think that makes a huge difference.
Well, are you talking about in the research, or are you talking about
in
general?
In general, and in moving forward with these kinds of things? Because I guess my short answer is I don't think it's going to be really helpful to legalize it if now all of a sudden people think they're just going to pop pills and then go about their day, and all of a sudden their brain's going to be quote unquote fixed, or their addiction is going to be quote unquote fixed. So I still believe it comes back to sitting in sacred ceremony, indigenous tribal facilitators, trained people who have a relationship with the medicine. I honestly don't. I'm very concerned and cautiously even skeptical about what the future holds because of what Big Pharma and the FDA have done, and even seeing what's happened to cannabis.
Yeah.
Cannabis is a sacred medicine. And now I have so many friends who have become addicted to it, or they're using it almost like candy or soda or an anxiety medication throughout the day. And I know it can be a nice maybe transition from Vicodin or whatever to whatever the next thing is. But again, it comes down to getting to the root cause of the issue, loving yourself, having compassion for yourself, and having a guide or a teacher or a therapist, whatever, along with the medicine in order to have lasting shifts and changes. Because I have seen people get addicted to healing, just addicted to plant medicine, and just taking 2 steps forward and 5 steps back if they don't have a guide, a teacher, or integration. So integration and who's serving it is going to make all the difference.
I agree. I have some concerns about the research studies that are going on because I don't think they're taking into account the spiritual aspect, the history of the plants. I don't know. I think there's some potential dangers there, although the results have been fantastic so far, but I don't know.
Well, there's always somewhere where there's an agenda, right? Who's doing the research? What are they sharing? What are they not sharing? And absolutely, for me, I don't even look at the research. I don't give a shit about the research. I only care about results and seeing people's lives changed and seeing, marriages saved and people coming off addictions and for lasting periods of time, not just like a quick fix, because this is also not a quick fix. And having been in the fitness industry and seeing the diets and the trends and the lotions and potions, the shakes and the pills, I just want to really caution people to see if this is the right path for you, because unless you're really committed and getting the right support and guidance, I wouldn't go down this path if I were you.
Well, Magdalena, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience. Where can people get a hold of you if they'd like to find out more?
Yay. Well, at this time, because I know this will be coming out later, full disclosure, like you said in even the intro, I'm in transition. I was known as Lois Koffi. The plants have shown me that she is now moved on, and I am now Misty Magdalena Grace. So I am on Instagram. I am on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. I also have a podcast, which I'd love to have you on, John. It's Healthy and Wealthy and Wise. So go look for that on Facebook or in iTunes. My YouTube channel is also a great one. So look for Misty Magdalena Grace on YouTube. And then I have a website that's all about microdosing primarily. It's microdosing for health.now.site. And I'll provide that link for you.
Okay. And I'll put that in the show notes. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yay. So glad to be here.
And that is it for this episode of The Evolved Caveman. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, rate, review, and share. If you didn't like it, you don't have to do a damn thing. Thanks so much. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Evolved Caveman podcast. If you like what you've heard, support us by subscribing, leaving reviews, and sharing the podcast with friends and colleagues. For the latest, most powerful tools to connect with like-minded men, join the Facebook group at The Evolved Caveman. Follow Dr. John on Instagram at The Evolved Caveman, all one word, or join the email list by visiting guidetoself.com.